Hello, welcome back to the channel. So, Sustain is in kind of a weird spot right now because it is both one of the most important archetypes in the game and some of the characters that we get the least of. Like, I've always wondered why. Like, why do we get so few abundance and preservation characters? And I think there is like a couple of reasons for that. First, which I think is the main reason, sustained characters are usually like some of the least pulled characters like in the whole game, and generally just aren't as like exciting for a lot of people as like a new big like DPS or like a really strong like support character. But just besides like the excitement factor, I feel like a lot of sustains have been done dirty with their banners. I'm not gonna lie, like Aventuring was right after Acheron, a really hyped character. So a lot of people already pulled for Acheron, and Lingsha was right after Fei Xiao, another really hyped character. So that kind of, doesn't really help when people have already pulled for like big characters, and then the sustained characters are right after them. So yeah, that kind of makes sense why a lot of people didn't pull for them. Like another thing I feel, which kind of helps with this, is that sustain doesn't really have that like one big hype character, in the same vein as like Acheron or like Firefly or like those types of characters, or even like Herta. The closest is probably like Aventurine, but I feel like a lot of the hype for him came after the story. Like I feel like he wasn't as hyped like before the patch came out. I feel like most people cared way more about Acheron than him. And that's not to say Sustain doesn't have like good or important characters. It definitely does. I mean, you aren't going to win most fights if you don't have a Sustain character on your team, unless you're doing some like weird speed stuff with Welt or something. But generally Sustains just aren't that exciting because I feel like there's only so much you can do to make healing exciting, But more like in terms of a design perspective, the main problem with Sustains is that there's only so many ways to make the characters different enough from each other when their entire job is to just like heal or shield. And I think this applies a lot more to preservation than abundance, because I think that preservation is just generally stronger than abundance. Since at least with like healing, there is like more interactions, since there are some characters that can use like their health as a resource, like Maide, so there is a bit more like synergy there. As for something like preservation, the main problem is that it's almost like too good. Like you would almost want a preservation character basically all the time over an abundance character on like almost any team, like unless you're using someone like Maide and then you're gonna want a healer. But like besides that, you would almost always want a preservation character, which is probably why we haven't gotten many, since it seems like the devs want to be careful with preservation so it doesn't just completely overshadow abundance as like a sustained option. I mean, you can also see this with how some of the archetypes were made. There is no preservation break character, there's only abundance break characters. So if you want to play break, you are kind of forced to use abundance. So it actually, makes abundance have a bit more of a place. Now technically, like, you can use Aventurine because he is just that good, even if he doesn't have that much synergy with break. But it definitely doesn't like feel as good as if you were using someone like, Gallagher or Lingsha. Now, does that justify us not getting a preservation character since 2.1? Yeah, not really. Even if I do kind of get it, I just don't really agree with it. Also, the fact that basically all of the preservation characters are 5 stars besides March really doesn't help. Like, the fact that we still haven't gotten a new preservation 4-star is insane to me. And also, most people are going to be using Hunt March anyway, so you don't even have that option now anyway. And one last thing that I do want to talk about, which isn't necessarily a problem, it's more just like an observation of the trajectory that Sustain has gone down, which is that Sustains aren't really like just Sustains anymore. They always have some sort of other thing that they do. I think that this really started with Ho-Ho being more of a mix of like a Harmony and Sustain character. Because before that, what did we have? We had like Luocha, who was like the most like healer character ever. He just does a lot of healing, but that's kind of it. And then like once we got to like 2.0, that was kind of, we saw that sort of archetype way more. Gallagher is much more of the offensive sort of healer. Lingsha is kind of offensive as well, while also buffing, break damage. And Aventurine, gives a ton of effect res while also being able to buff crit damage with his ult, and also just being very good in follow-up teams. And I do have a feeling that Hyacine is going to follow this kind of trajectory as well. Now that is me kind of just assuming that she is going to be abundance, but like there is no way she's not going to be a healer. Like, she is literally like the healer character. It just wouldn't make sense for her not to be. I mean, I guess technically she could like also be like a remembrance healer, which is a whole other can of worms in itself. But we'll just have to see, since I don't even know how far she would be out to release. Like, anyway, I'm getting off topic. I just think that like at the rate that we are getting sustained characters is just not enough, especially since like it is getting harder for a lot of older sustained characters to keep up with how much some of the new bosses attack, like, you know, the Nook. Now I would kind of rather than just buff those older characters than to just leave them in the dust, so at least there's more options, especially for preservation. But I do also think that, you know, we need new sustained characters, because preservation only having 4 characters is insane. Like, that is just not okay at all. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.